This presentation will focus on Chapter 4 and forming perceptions. When you look at this image, what do you see? Some people will see a wine goblet. Others will see silhouettes of two faces facing one another. If you look at it long enough, you'll likely be able to see both. And what you see in the image is influenced by a variety of factors. In this presentation, we'll investigate 5 probable influences on our perceptions. And in addition, we'll look at a tool that can be used for sharpening our perceptions called perception checking. We will begin by looking at influence on the perception process. We know that perception is a process of selecting, organizing, and interpreting the stimuli that surround us. The influences on our perception that will be discussed play the most significant role in the interpretation phase of perception. The first of these influences is access to information. How much we know about a person or situation helps us in developing interpretations, events, or behaviors. I think we'd all agree the better we know a person, the easier it is to interpret their behavior and their communication. And the reverse is true. The less we know about someone, the more difficult it is to form accurate perceptions. Our second category of influences are physiological influences. Physiology refers to functions related to our physical bodies, and as you can see in the slide, there are a variety of factors related to physiology that can influence our perceptions, including the senses, age, health, fatigue, hunger, biological cycles, and neurobehavioral disorders. Because we take in stimuli via the 5 senses, any deficiency in any of these senses will influence our perceptions. In addition, chronological age influences how we interpret information and behaviors. We obviously view things differently as adults than we did as children, and in addition, the older we get, the more experiences we have, and thus the more perceptual schema or mental frameworks we have created, which allow us a greater base of knowledge for interpreting behaviors. Physical health, fatigue, and hunger all influence our perceptions. In general, if we feel well rested and well nourished, then we're more likely to interpret situations and behaviors more positively. But take away any of those 3, and we're more likely to be negative in our interpretations. When people feel sick, feel tired, or feel hungry, most tend to be more short-tempered and therefore may interpret communication or behaviors of others more negatively. Another physiological influence is our biological cycles. You've probably heard of terms like a morning person or a night person. These terms refer to the differences in biological cycles in humans. People vary in terms of when they feel most alert and most productive. I've been a morning person most of my life, and I tend to welcome challenges early in the day. However, the same challenges feel more daunting to me late in the afternoon or in the evening because that's when my body is telling me it's time to wind down. The final influence related to physiology is neurobehavioral disorders. Maladies like ADHD or bipolar disorders influence factors like our ability to pay attention for long periods of time or suffer drastic mood swings. It's easy to see how these conditions could significantly influence our perceptions. In addition to physiological influence, how our minds work also influence our perceptions. Influences related to the mind fall in the category of psychological influences. 2 particular psychological influences on perception are mood and an individual's self-concept. Research indicates our different moods influence people to interpret the same situations differently. For instance, 2 friends who are discussing plans for the weekend. Friend A, who is in a happy mood, sees an ad for an outdoor music festival. Knowing that they both like music, she suggests that they attend the festival. Friend B, however, who is in a bad mood because perhaps maybe a bad day at work, responds with, "It'll probably be crowded, food will be expensive, and traffic will be really bad," and indicates they would rather not go to the event. We also tend to interpret behaviors more positively or favorably when in a good mood and tend to be more critical of the behavior of others when in a bad mood. The second psychological influence, self-concept, is discussed at length in Chapter 3 of our interplay text. As you may recall, the way we feel about ourselves strongly influences our interpretations of events around us and behaviors of others. Feeling positively about ourselves leads us to view others more positively. Similarly, research by Bosacki indicates our perceptions of how funny another person is positively correlated to our perceptions of ourselves, how funny we think ourselves to be. The fourth set of influences are social influences. As members of society, we all serve in a variety of different roles. Some of the roles that have particular influence on our perceptions are gender, occupation, and relationship roles. From early in our lives, we learn differences in individuals based on biological sex. It may even be argued that biological sex is our first dividing line when categorizing individuals. If you don't believe this, then look for an old Saturday Night Live skit called Pat. The main character, Pat, was a sexually ambiguous individual, meaning it was difficult or impossible for others to determine if Pat was a male or a female. The skit is funny because it reflects how uncomfortable sexual ambiguity can make us. We think and act differently depending on if we are interacting with a male or interacting with a female. Gender, which is different from biological sex, deals with social and psychological elements of masculine and feminine behavior. While we usually equate masculine behavior with males and feminine behavior with females, it's also possible for females to demonstrate masculine behaviors and vice versa. Gender roles influence perceptions of communication in that the masculine perspective sees communication as a tool or utility, something that's used to get things done. Feminine orientations tend to view communication as a means for nurturing relationships and will pay closer attention to emotional elements of messages. Occupational roles also influence perceptions. A simple example of this is to imagine how a communication student and a communication instructor might view the relevance and importance of a course like interpersonal communication. Students may not so much be interested in the subject matter because the utility of the course is it enables them to cross off another requirement on their way to a college degree. For an instructor who has devoted a significant portion of her life to studying and teaching communication, she will have a different perspective on the importance and usefulness of the course content. Relational roles like parent, brother, sister, best friend, or romantic partner influence how we perceive the behavior of others or events around us. For instance, I never really noticed how busy our street was with traffic or how fast cars went down the street until I began playing with my son in the front yard after he began walking. Cars that were not perceived as a danger to myself could be perilous to a child who's unaware of how dangerous they can be. Similarly, we tend to perceive our best friends and romantic partners differently from the rest of the general public. Our final influence on perceptions is cultural influences. We've already in the course discussed various aspects of culture and key components of cultural difference, but let's take a look at a few more specific ways culture can influence our perceptions. One area of cultural influence is the value of talk versus the value of silence. The culture of the United States places high value on talk. We like to verbally interact when in the company of another, and we often refer to awkward silence during times when no one has anything to say. If you've ever taken a long car ride with someone that you don't know well, or had a bad first date, you probably understand this idea perfectly. However, other cultures that value less talk and silence, more specifically Asian cultures, view our talkativeness as self-indulgent and perceive Americans as boisterous and loud. Americans, on the other hand, may view Asians as standoffish or difficult to engage with because of their comfort with silence. Another influence can be seen in the cultural value of individualism and collectivism. Individualists have a more difficult time seeing the perspectives of others compared to those from collectivist cultures. Collectivist cultures, because of their value on group harmony, are more adept at perspective taking and seeing things from the points of view of another. So now that we have a stronger understanding of how access to information, physiological influences, psychological influences, social influences, and culture can affect our perceptions, let's look at a tool that can be used to help us sharpen our perceptions, or at least test our perceptions to see if they are accurate. The Interplay text presents a process called perception checking. Perception checking involves 3 steps. 1. Identify the behavior or situation. 2. Provide 2 explanations or interpretations. And 3. Seek clarification. Let's apply these to a situation. A good friend from your workplace not joined you for your regular lunchtime walks during the past 3 days, even though you've left her messages to let her know you miss her and you'd like for her to join you for a stroll. She usually responds to your messages or walks with you. Recently, she hasn't responded. Using the perception checking process, we first would begin by describing the behavior. In this step, we want to avoid making a judgmental or evaluative statement like, "Why are you avoiding me?" or "Why are you mad at me?" While these are two possible judgments that could be accurate, we just want to focus on describing what's happened. So a statement like, "You haven't joined me to walk at lunch for the past few days and haven't responded to my messages." The statement only states the facts. It doesn't imply any judgment or evaluation. Next, we provide two interpretations. We provide two interpretations for a couple of reasons. First, it helps to illustrate to the other person that their behavior or the situation could be judged or interpreted in at least two different ways, possibly more. It also opens the lines of discussion of what has actually occurred. While both interpretations should be plausible, neither interpretation offered must necessarily be our actual interpretation. So here's a sample interpretation statement. "I'm not sure if you've just been really busy with work or if you may be angry at me for some reason." Our final step is seek clarification. Once we've provided possible interpretations, we invite the other person to help us better understand their behavior or the situation by presenting a statement of clarification. "Can you tell me why I haven't heard from you in a few days?" Perception checking is actually a fairly simple and effective process that can be productive in opening the lines of communications with others. This concludes our presentation on influences of perception and perception checking. To review, we've discussed 5 potential influences on our perceptions, including access to information, physiological influences, psychological influences, social influences, and cultural influences. We've also learned the process of perception checking and how it may be used to help us clarify our perceptions of people and events that surround us.